This time I will call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. We continue to operate under emergency operations due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As such, we do have, we're broadcasting from the Merit Center, Emergency Operations Center. There are a number of people that are in attendance here, but we are below the restricted guidelines. We have a number of members of the City Council that are connected, as well as staff that are connected by distance to this meeting and will participate in that manner. I will call on City Clerk Kyle Box to take the roll.
Mayor Burns.
Here.
Craig Schaefer.
Present.
Meister.
Present.
Glenn Bearcoller.
Here.
John DeCramer.
Here.
Russ Labatt.
Here.
Jim Lazinski.
Here.
And the council is all present. We will move then to the agenda that we have this evening. Are there any changes to that agenda? If not, we'll operate under that agenda. Then the first action item would be to consider the approval of the minutes of the meeting, regular meeting that was held on November 10th, 2020. The council does have the minutes of that meeting. Are there any corrections to the note at this time?
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Craig to approve the minutes as they have been presented. We'll move to a vote. Kyle?
Mayor Burns.
Yes.
Craig Schaefer.
Yes.
Steve Meister.
Yes.
Glenn Bearcoller.
Yes.
John DeCramer.
Yes.
Russ Labatt.
Yes.
Jim Lazinski.
Yes.
And the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 3, which is a public hearing. This is a public hearing on the North First Street, West Redwood, West Marshall Street proposed reconstruction. So we will have a public hearing. Following the public hearing, then we'll consider the resolution that would order the improvement and the preparation of plans. I will call on Director of Public Works, City Engineer Craig, Jason Anderson to conduct this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. Can everyone hear me all right?
We can.
Yes.
Great. Well, this project is the complete reconstruction and utility replacement in the areas outlined in front of you there on North First Street from Main Street over to Marshall, and Redwood Street and West Redwood and West Marshall between College Drive and First Street. It's a replacement of surfacing, roadway surfacing that's in poor condition, sidewalks, driveways, everything in the right of way, as well as replacement of undersized water main. So there's a lot of 4-inch water main in that area that we'll be upsizing and replacing with better material, sanitary sewer replacement, and storm sewer replacement. We did hold a public informational meeting with residents who were and neighboring property owners who were invited to the meeting on October 15th. That was held at the Merit Center, and we had Zoom attendance available. And obviously everyone's been notified again tonight of this public hearing to choose to come and listen if they'd like. If the council decides to proceed here with this project and the ordering of the improvement, we will need a 4/5 vote. Just want to remind the council of that. Our current engineer's estimate for this project is $1,413,000. That's including a little contingency and engineering fees. The improvements are proposed to be assessed in accordance with our most current special assessment policy. And the cost share would also be borne by Marshall Municipal Utilities for water main, our wastewater department for wastewater main, and the surface water utility fund for all stormwater infrastructure. I don't think I've got anything else to share at this time. I think I'll turn it back.
Thank you, Jason. This time then we'll open up for public comment. Is there anyone in the room who's here for this agenda item, for this hearing?
What was your question?
Is there anyone here that's for this public hearing on this, for this agenda?
Yes, we both are.
Okay, so at this time, I'll open up for any public comment. If you wanted to speak, we'll have you come up and use the microphone, and then as for the record, we'll need your address and name. So
Should be all set.
Okay, my name is Stu Zick, and I live at 103 West Marshall. So I'm one of the three houses on West Marshall there, the middle one. And more than anything, I'm interested in the project. In many ways, I'm excited about the project if it happens, but I do have some questions, and I'm hopeful that this is the venue to ask those.
exactly.
Okay, so first of all, the construction timeline. I'm under the impression that the project would be let for contract, started, and finished in the calendar year of 2021. Is that correct?
That's correct. But why don't you go through all your questions, and then I'm going to turn to Jason.
Okay.
And you'll respond.
And then obviously, I'm curious about the assessment amount and how that works and what property owners have as options to be able to pay that or meet those standards. And then I'm also very curious about this project. I'm under the impression that there'll be angle parking across the street from where I live. And that may work very well. I'm a little skeptical of it just because I think it'll tighten the street there to where right in front of my house, cars will be squeezed right in front of our homes there. So I'm a little concerned about that. So I don't see parking. I've lived there for 3 years now, and I don't see parking necessarily at the park as an issue. Other than, of course, like on Wednesday nights, if the bands are playing or whatever, and special events, obviously it could get crowded on that street. But I've been super impressed with the community and how they've parked on that street when there is an excess of traffic. And I've never had a problem there, and I've never seen anyone upset with anybody else's parking issues there. So that's been nice. And then related to that, I'm curious if, I know there's trees on the park side of the street, but I'm curious if there is going to be angle parking, could the curb be moved a foot or so to the east, I suppose, to make it a little less tight if there's angled parking there and then cars are crossing on the other side of those vehicles. And then selfishly, if we're going to have new curbs and gutters and sidewalks and approaches into my driveway, and my driveway is the only driveway on West 3rd there. I'm the middle street, and I actually have a driveway going to my garage. I would like to be able to plan or schedule or replace the rest of my concrete in my driveway. So I'd like to be able to do that all in one piece if I can. And I know that may not be something you can answer. It depends on the contractor and their timing and stuff like that. I've worked for 40 years in the asphalt business, so I understand road construction. But I'd like to be able to have the option to potentially schedule the same pour or whatever, or if I decide to have Dunix or somebody put some asphalt hot mix in there for me on the rest of my driveway from the sidewalk up to my garage, I'd like to be able to schedule that correctly so I don't muck up the new concrete, and I can get some asphalt in there, or if I decide to do concrete, I can do that all in one piece.
Okay.
So those are some of my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Stu. All good questions. Jason, I'll turn to you. I think you'll be able to address all the questions. The assessment question you'll address in generalities because we don't have the cost yet, and there'll be a subsequent, if this project moves forward, an assessment hearing. But go ahead, Jason.
Thank you. And I agree. All good questions and comments, and thank you for bringing that forward. The mayor addressed the timeline. It is, at this point, we're proposing a 2021 construction season project. If all goes well, we would get this project bid in a fairly timely fashion and hopefully have an early start and an early finish. But we'll see what happens with the contractors and their scheduling. The assessment amount for residential properties right now, your maximum street assessment is capped at $5,700. In addition to that $5,700 maximum, you may be expected to pay for sewer service lines if you have one, and I believe you do on that property that would go out to the street. So you'd be responsible for the sewer service line cost from the center of the road to the property line where we stop our project. And you'll be responsible for a portion of your driveway costs. Current policy is 50% cost share with the city and the property owner. The assessment policy is being reviewed at this time, so that may change slightly, but if it does, I would expect it would change in your favor and not to your detriment. So that's the generality with special assessments.
And the time frame of potentially the paying the assessment is typically 8 years.
Yes, that is typical. And if you'd like to pay it off in full at any point in time, right away before it goes on to assessment rolls, you may do that. Or once you've paid a few years, if you decide to make a lump sum payment and pay it off, you can do that at any time. But you do have 8 years, and it goes against the property taxes and your tax rolls if you'd like that to be an option. Angle parking, that is something that we did discuss here. We're proposing to widen that street by 1 foot to help accommodate that. And I think right now we were proposing to widen that curb 1 foot towards your property at this point in time, if I remember right. And that was due to, we thought there was fewer conflicts in doing that. Point taken on the parking consideration, that is what we were thinking about as well, as when there's maybe events in the park that we could double the amount of cars that can park right next to the park if we put them in at an angle. And I would propose that if we stripe it that way, we stripe it so that the road doesn't feel narrow on a regular basis. But that's something we can look at a little harder. And was there another question that I'm missing here? Oh, replacing the rest of your driveway. Yeah, once we know who the contractor is, we can certainly put you in communication with the contractor, and you could try to work out a deal where that they could maybe do the rest of your driveway. We do stop our project at the right of way at the property line, so that's near the sidewalk. So that's where we will stop. But if you are able to work it out with a contractor that we hire to go further, you can always do that.
Sure. Yes, please. And while you're coming up, Stu, did that address your question?
Yeah, I think so for now. I realize that, it's a long process. I get it. I just wanted to be here to ask a few of those things.
Yep. Thank you.
My name is Shelley Lipinski. I live at 101 West Marshall. So I'm on the corner. In the letter, it said sidewalks on both sides. Are they just replacing existing sidewalk, or are they adding sidewalk?
Jason?
Just existing sidewalk. At this point in time, we're not proposing sidewalk on your block. There was too many complications and issues. We would have been tearing out very nice trees, and we would end up very close to your garage.
Yep, I did not want my trees coming out.
Yeah, we didn't. We thought it'd be most prudent to not propose that at this time. So
Perfect. That's pretty much all I wanted to know.
Okay.
I also would like to know if I can do the rest of my driveway, but mine is on First Street.
Right.
It's a very short drive. But if I could too, with the contractor, have them do the rest, because mine is it's bad.
Okay.
So,
If I could, if you wouldn't mind calling up to Public Works sometime, maybe next week, we can discuss your driveway in particular and where we're planning to have it end and anything that we can do differently. You've got a unique situation and maybe we should just talk about it.
Absolutely.
I think right here.
So what are you showing me?
I think, isn't that you right here? You said you're on the corner?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes,
Right there.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, I just didn't want sidewalk there because, well, my driveway's short, so no
Yep.
matter what, I would have blocked
Right, so
sideway
just comes
block.
Right.
Trees, fence, all that would have had to come out. My other question is being that we're doing this project and they are replacing sewer. As a homeowner, can you have the contractor do the sewer into your home too?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Jason?
They may be hesitant to do it, our street contractor. They have in the past
Okay,
on some of our projects, worked it out with property owners to go further up to the home. I don't know I think they're usually pretty hesitant to do that, but you can certainly, we can put you in contact and you can have those conversations, but they may request that you just hire your own underground contractor to do that work.
which is understandable. I do know mine is bad. I think 5 years ago, I had to have somebody come in and get tree roots out. And they said it's original. And the house, I think, is 34 or 36. So it's time.
If we notice anything when our contractors doing the work, if we notice severely bad sewer lines, we will certainly let you know one way or another. So you at least can handle it how you want to.
Very good.
Yep, those are the questions I
Okay,
have.
thank you. Anyone else in the room have questions or input? Now to the council, input from the council as part of the public hearing.
He covered commercial assessment. The only, when you talk about assessment, the only talk about residential.
Jason, there's a question about the commercial assessments. Again.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure which property in particular, but the commercial assessments, as the policy stands today, they're assessed the full amount of the cost that the utilities don't pay. But we are working on an amendment that institutes some caps on the commercial amounts as well, consistent with what we've been doing on our most recent reconstruction in the industrial park. So we'll be bringing that forward to council soon. If you have questions on a specific property, you can certainly call me and we can discuss that. And I've got a preliminary sheet with what I assume our policy will be in the coming months. But without knowing specific properties, we can't have specific conversations.
Okay. Any other input from the room? Input from the council as part of the public hearing?
I do have some input here, and Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the caps on residential and working on the caps on commercial, which I'm all for, by the way, I think that's good. This is me a very expensive property pushed on toward the city of Marshall and our levy. As I look at with the park there and the large commercial businesses along there, for, onto the levy next year. And I guess I'm getting at is if for some reason we run into, and I don't think we will because the vaccine's out and there's a light at the end of the tunnel here, as Dr. Meister will tell us later. Budget wise, this is one we should watch for our levy, correct? In case this gets high is what I'm getting at.
Sharon, do you want to address that?
I'd have to go back and look at the bonding sheet and maybe Annette or Jason have it in front of them. I don't, but this would be a levy impact for 2022, not 2021. We'd be looking at bonding next year. And I don't remember how much. So I'd have to look at that and get back to you.
And there should be some bond obligations drop off in 2021 and 22.
Okay, and that helps. So that answers my question. So this is not affecting our 2021 budget, which we'll be approving in a couple weeks.
Correct.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other input from the council?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question for Jason again. Refresh my memory, Jason. from North First Street to East, from East Main to in West Marshall, we're proposing a 1-foot grass buffer. I think I brought that up before, and I don't remember exactly what you said. In my opinion, a 1-foot grass buffer is senseless. You're not going to get grass to grow on 1 foot, but clue me in a little bit, please.
Yes, I think that was put in just to indicate that the sidewalk would be placed 1 foot away from the property line. So there's a 1 foot strip of right of way between the sidewalk and the private property. It is grass all the way from the sidewalk up to the property. So it's not just a 1 foot strip. It's however large their front yard is plus the 1 foot. If
Thank
that
you.
makes sense.
Okay, other input? If not,
I'll make a motion to close the public meeting.
motion by
Second.
John, seconded by Jim to close the public hearing. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Kyle?
Mayor Burns,
Yes?
Craig Schaefer. Craig Schaefer,
Sorry.
Steve
You're still
Meister,
muted. Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
Yes,
Jim Lozinski.
Yes.
Craig, did you want to vote?
Yes.
And the motion does pass. The next item then would be the resolution that would order the improvement and preparation of the plans. Are there questions about this resolution?
I move adoption.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim for the resolution that would order the improvement and preparation of plans. Discussion on the motion?
Mr. Mayor, you've noted in the memo in the council packet that this does require a supermajority 4/5 vote.
Thank you, Sharon. Any other questions or discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote.
Mayor Burns,
Yes?
Craig Schaefer,
Yes.
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
no,
Jim Lozinski.
Yes.
And the motion does pass on a supermajority. Thank you. Thank you. We'll move then to agenda item number 4. This is consider the award a bid for the pickup of garbage and trash at various locations. So Kyle, I'll turn to you, Kyle Box, City Clerk. Again, there's probably some interested parties that are in the room here that were bidders. So if there are questions, as Stu kind of showed us the way here, we'd like you to use the microphone at the podium, just because this then is broadcast to the rest of the council as well as to the public. With that, Kyle.
Thank you, Mayor Burns. Earlier this fall, bids were sent out to 3 prospective bidders for our garbage and trash pickups at various city locations. This is a 2-year contract. Bids were opened on November 6th. Staff had reviewed the bids, and the recommendation before you tonight is to award the contract to Southwest Sanitation. If there are any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, we'll open up for questions from the council regarding the recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilman Labatt. First of all, I want to thank Kyle and Jason and Dean at the street shop, and also Eric and Jasmine at the airport this morning. I had some time to look over the bid, and what struck me as odd was that our airport is the only location that we have that requires a 3-yard container, which kind of surprised me a little bit. I thought, how much garbage is actually generated at the airport? Well, I was informed by the course of a couple of days of what. So I looked at, and Dennis, maybe you can answer me. Does the city provide garbage service for the tenants that are out there? Is that included in their contract? And my second question is, when talking to Dean, we don't have any recycling at the airport, which I thought was really odd. Dean did indicate they do generate a considerable amount of cardboard, and we could probably save some money if not this year, maybe in years coming, if we put a recycling container at the airport that could be used by not only the city, Midwest Aviation Enterprise, and I believe some financial company that's out there. So I felt that it was really strange that this is the only location in Marshall that had that 3-yard container. It is full and it's dumped twice a week, but I think we could reduce that maybe to a smaller container if we encourage recycling out at that location. And Dean did tell me this morning that he had an extra dumpster that he would be willing to put out there and have Southwest Sanitation label it for recycling only and give it a try, if not for the whole year, at least for 6 months, to see what would happen if we could reduce this cost a little bit. So again, I thank the city employees for answering all my questions. And again, I think we should really take a look at putting a recycling container out at the airport. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Dennis or Kyle, do you want to?
I am not certain what the lease says about garbage services, whether that's provided or whether that is at the tenant's expense. I'm not sure.
Okay. That would have to be followed up on.
And Dennis, I think that'd be a good thing to follow up, because if the city is paying for garbage, and I'm not picking on anybody, but one of the other 3 tenants out there, we're paying for to remove their garbage.
I will follow up on that.
Yeah. Okay. Other question from the council regarding the recommendation?
I have some comments, and I kind of wade through this today, and I believe it's a good recommendation, by the way. You know, I just visited with Preston, and on the surface, the $3,000 to me looked like, well, we can save $3,000. As I dug into this, you know, Preston alone stated to me he'd have to increase his garbage budget from 4,000 to, I believe, or it'd be another 4,000 going to West Central alone for his garbage at the parks and at the Merit Center. And then I visited with other staff about same-day service, and I'm not picking on West Central. They're a good company. I've used them before, but not having a shop or a truck located in Marshall, it's harder to call them on 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning saying my dumpsters are full at the Merit Center, I need them dumped, and get them dumped at 10:30. And those extra dumps, Southwest Sanitation overall is cheaper, so there'd be savings there. And that same day service, when I have garbage piling up, is a big issue. It's when we have events, we can't have dumpsters getting dumped on Monday when they're full on Saturday. And again, I'm not picking on West Central. I've used them before. They're a good company, but on the surface, it looked good. But as you dug into this, our Southwest Sanitation actually, I believe, will be significantly cheaper over a year. I believe Annette sent me the total, and correct me if I'm not wrong, Annette, but I think our garbage total has run over 50,000 this year with our extra dumps and our on-call dumps. Are you still on, Annette, or are you gone?
I'm still here.
Yeah, I believe you sent me it's 54,000 that we've actually paid Southwest Sanitation. So the contract is a small portion of actually what our garbage service is.
Yep, and that figure was all the way through 2019 was that 55,000. I believe it was all the way through January of 2019.
So,
okay.
2 years.
But I just think in the long run, it's a good recommendation, and I will be supporting the staff's recommendation.
Any other input from the council?
I'll make a motion to approve the garbage and refuge hauling contract to Southwest Sanitation.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by John, seconded by Jim. Discussion?
Mr.
Go ahead,
Mayor,
Glenn.
are we again, sorry, Glenn, are we again going to be able to amend this contract if we find out differently on the tenants at the airport?
Kyle?
Dan Ritter, who is present, is shaking his head. So I think that we can come to an amended agreement if we find out we need to do that.
And Glenn?
I was just going to say again that, it looks like West Central is the low bid because they have the low base bid, but when you consider the alternates, in the end, Southwest Sanitation would end up with a lower cost. And I think that the people, the citizens of Marshall need to know that we're looking at the total cost, not just the base bid when we award the contract. That's all I have.
Noted.
And
Any
Mr.
other-
Mayor,
Yes.
yeah, and I just like to go on what Glenn said. I believe that the last time we looked at this contract, we had a similar situation, and you really have to, drill down into the details. Jim and I discussed that earlier today too. And you have to weigh all of the factors to really understand what the bid is and what it does result in for end cost for us. And Southwest does obviously have a much better bid.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Kyle?
Mayor Burns,
Yes?
Craig Schaefer,
Yes.
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
yes,
Jim Lozinski.
Yes.
And the motion passes. We'll move then to the consent agenda. We'll bring the items on consent agenda up on the screen. And they include the consider authorization to declare vehicles as surplus property for Marshall Police Department, consider the approval of a rural service district resolution, consider the approval of farm lease between E. Basut Family Farms, the tenant, and the city of Marshall as the landlord, and consider the approval of the bills and the project payments. Is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants removed for purposes of separate discussion?
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Kyle?
Mayor Burns,
Yes?
Craig Schaefer,
Yes.
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
yes,
Jim Lozinski.
Yes.
And the motion does pass. Move then to agenda item number 9, consider the approval of the partnership agreement between the city of Marshall and Marshall Municipal Utilities. This was considered by a subcommittee and represented by Councilmember DeCramer and myself, as well as 2 representatives of the Marshall Municipal Utilities Board that worked with staff on all the aspects of this partnership agreement. I'll call on MMU Utilities Manager Dave Sheltoff to kind of walk through the highlights of this, and then he of course will be open for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, as the mayor talked about on November 3rd, the partnership agreement. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, good. On November 3rd, we met partnership agreement and committee, and we talked about all of the various aspects of this. And I could take your questions. We can go line by line, but what I would like to do is to go to the first agreement, which is payment in lieu of taxes or pilot, which is the second page on your handout, and look at the 2 connecting pages, specifically the second I would say spreadsheet of the numbers. It says City of Marshall and Marshall Municipal Utilities Agreement Attachment B. If I can direct you to that particular attachment, thank you very much. You are a good man. Thank you very much, Kyle. So if you take a look at there, the estimate for 2021, there you go, perfect. You will see that it has all of the pilot numbers enumerated and separated out, and it basically reflects all of the financial agreements within this agreement, this partnership agreement. The pilot base is $823,000 next year, and the EDA support number is $184,000. So let's talk about that a little bit, just for the council's sake. The old joint agreement was basically completed. All of the industrial park work was finished. The partnership between the city and MMU was financially completed. And so therefore we were looking at a new way that we could move forward with the city to support economic development activities in the community and make this a win-win-win for MMU, the city, and the citizens of of Marshall, and specifically the EDC, or excuse me, the EDA, Economic Development Authority. And so some heads got together. We discussed a plan of attack and how to make that happen. And what the original agreement between the city and MMU, we had some issues with, we determined the pilot through a 5-year rolling average on kilowatt hour sales. And that's how we determined how much money was actually given to the city. This new agreement we're proposing that we do this over 10 years. And what does that do for both of us? It settles out the annual giving. So if there isn't a big jump in sales or a big drop in sales, the giving is averaged over 10 years, and it provides some stability for that number. So that's a benefit for the city and for MMU in long-term planning and financial agreements. And so that $184,000 comes from this new formula over 10 years. And that's going to replace the old agreement of up to $500,000 a year, depending on depending on the need. And again, as I remind you, that $500,000 a year was based upon a joint economic development agreement that is already finished, and all the monies have been paid out. So moving forward, how do we take this partnership of economic development between the city of Marshall and MMU? We use this new formula, this annual stipend that's given to the city for the Economic Development Authority and the new formula of $184,000 a year. So that's that line item. Sorry if that gets a little bit belabored, and I'll take questions on that for you. And as you go down the list here, you'll see that total pilot payments there of $1,007,000. And then discounted services that the MMU pays for the city and the services provided to the city. Streetlight costs, and that's $277,000. Fire protection costs, that's $203,000. Wastewater billing costs, and that's $92,000. Surface water billing costs is $24,000. Total discounted services to the city is $597,000, almost $600,000, giving you a total of $1,605,000 of pilot and allocated cost discounts to the city. Now, all of the agreements in this particular binder that you have enumerate those and talk about those specifically. So if anybody has any questions about any one of those individual numbers, we can go right there and drill down and talk about that together. The real change in this packet, the big change, is with, of course, the EDA support and the change from the old contract, old agreement between the city and MMU to the proposed new agreement that was approved by the committee. Does anybody have any questions so far?
Dave, you're going to talk about the 4.19% and how that compares industry-wide, citywide, across the country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that information, pointing that out. So the 4.1% is the percentage of transfer from MMU to the city. And if you take a look at the regional average for municipal city transfers in this region, it's 4.19%. And you can get that from our APPA, or American Public Power Association website. And it's statistical numbers that they collect every year from all of their members. So MMU will be a little bit higher than the regional average in transfer to the city. Is there any questions about that? Perfect. So let's go back to the beginning, the first page, and we can go through the individual agreements together. Payment in lieu of taxes, we just talked about that. We have a new formula That formula averages out the power usage over 10 years and the revenue from that usage. And it creates a new way to support EDA. Now, why is MMU wanting to do this? Is because it's a win-win-win, as I talked before. MMU wins because now we're supporting economic development for the city of Marshall. As you probably know, over the last few years, our load at Marshall, the city of Marshall, and all of our industrial customers, residential customers, commercial customers, has been going down. So how do we reverse this trend? Well, by encouraging economic development, becoming partners with the city, and helping to pay for that endeavor. And that's what this money is for. And we hope that we are fruitful with this together as we team up. Is there any questions about that? That's the big one, and it's the big change.
And the reason it's going down is primarily because of efficiency, both residential and industrial.
That's a great question, great statement, Mr. Mayor. That is correct. So LED lighting, for example, when you change out an LED light bulb, it doesn't seem like much from a 60 watt to a 9 watt bulb. Well, you have 51 watts that you're saving. Now you multiply that by thousands of light bulbs, by thousands of fluorescent lights, you start to see a tremendous reduction in your load. Higher efficiency air conditioning units, heating units, all these things contribute to the reduction in electrical usage. So yes, the answer to that is one of the reasons why we're reducing in load is because of efficiencies. That's a good thing. That's a very good thing. So any questions so far? Jump right in there because, you know, I tend to go fast, and if anybody gets lost, I don't want to do that here today. So this is my first time presenting this agreement to the city. I feel like I am kind of treading on thin ice here, making sure that I don't miss anything.
We want to assure you that you're not in a Senate committee hearing. Okay, so we're good folk. Thanks, Doc, for that line too. I stole that from Doc.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. I'm sorry, I'll probably never get to really know anybody. Since I first got here, we had this mask mandate, and I tell you, I don't recognize anyone with their masks on. It's a tough road to hoe. So with that, let's go on to the next one, which is street lighting. Does anybody want to talk about this new agreement? There's really no change to the fundamental agreement itself. There are some changes to the numbers because our costs went up from year to year. Any questions about that? The next one would be fire protection. As you know, the city of Marshall and MMU work together with fire protection. This year, we're proposing that next year MMU will be paying, the city of Marshall will be paying $140,000, but MMU will pick up $203,000 of that tab. Any questions? Wastewater and surface water management billing and collections. This is an excellent symbiotic relationship between the city and MMU. Well, we have to bill everybody every month anyways. Why don't we just get together and help each other out and find some ways to make that more efficient? So all these bills go under one house, if you will. And MMU does that on behalf of the city. And that is a cost that the city brings to MMU brings to the city. Any questions about those things? It's about wastewater, surface water management, billing, and collections. Next thing would be professional engineering services. Well, let me tell you something. This is an amazing benefit to MMU. We appreciate Jason and his team. I have come to know them on our weekly meetings as they come to MMU and talk about all of the open projects in the community and what's been going on in MMU. Just great people to work with. and we are appreciative of that relationship. And this particular agreement, if you're not familiar with it, it provides engineering services to MMU, and MMU pays the city $65,000. And if the project goes above $406,000, whatever the project goes above as far as cost for the water side, if it's 500,000, the difference between those two numbers, the city pays 16% of that MMU pays 16% of that to the city for engineering services. So it's a great symbiotic relationship. We could support the city in this, and the city supports us. Any questions on that particular agreement? And now we get to the joint industrial land development agreement. The original one that was passed in 2007, we are now asking the council to abolish that and replace it with the new one. And this agreement number is 6A-2 or 6A.2. And it's joint industrial land development, new agreement outlining termination of the previous agreement and then giving a new agreement in its place. Are there any questions about this from the council? If not, we'll continue. And capital funding plan. MMU and the partnership with the city, we can take advantage of tax-free bonding, municipal bonding. We're happy to say that next year we will not be coming to the city to ask for that help. We can do all of our work internally and pay for it internally. Fiber optic utilization. If the council isn't aware, MMU has a significant fiber infrastructure in place throughout the city. That fiber infrastructure is made for government entities, specifically the city and MMU, and all of our substations, all of our warehouses, everything that we own are connected via fiber link and the looped system. That, I believe, brings great value to the city and also to MMU and other entities, the school districts and other customers of this fiber network. So next year, the city does have one project that they would like MMU to do, and that is take fiber to their Tiger Lake lift station. And that estimate is about $6,000. And that's the agreement between the city and MMU. Telephone sharing with your new building and with the IT services that have been separated from MMU. It is our understanding that the city will have and establish their own phone service in 2021 when they move into their new building. The next one is the chloride reduction coordination. At your last commission meeting, or maybe it was the one before that. I think it was the last one. Jeff Larson, our manager of our water department, came and gave you a brief report on the progress report of the water softening project out at the water treatment plant. It's going very well, and there's some things that will be changing for Marshall when that gets completed. Namely, it'll be the water that you'll receive into your home will be less hard, and you'll be able to keep your water softeners if you would like, but you won't have to use it as much to soften your water because the water will already have been softened at the treatment plant. And we are working with the city and resolution 4637, which is the next piece of paper in your pamphlet. That particular resolution will be working with the city to educate the citizens of Marshall on the new water that they'll be receiving from this new water treatment plant. And it's going to require some education, some teamwork between us to make that happen. And that's a part of that agreement. Here's another great, incredible partnership that we have with the city is the GIS coordination. It's amazing what we have here. It truly is. Every utility, both city and MMU, is on a CAD drawing that either entity, either the city or MMU, can access. You can find out where that particular asset is in the ground. It's a map, and it's basically a Google map, and over that Google map is all of the utilities embedded on it. It's an amazing tool for us all. And that partnership makes that happen. And this agreement defines what that partnership is between the city and MMU. It's wonderful. I tell you, it's a great thing for both entities. And next year, it's going to cost about $32,000. And now the point I want to make about this agreement, it's actual cost. This is just an estimate. This particular agreement, it's estimating it's going to cost $32,000 next year, but it's only what it was actually used. But it won't be anything more than $32,000. And then finally, and I feel like Karnak, I have the final envelope. I don't think many people get that joke, so maybe I shouldn't have said
It's been a while ago.
The final envelope in my hand. Radio frequency coordination, a very important part of both of our operations. Of course, these are the radios in the car, and this year we had to work with renewing our license, and we are finished with that. By the end of the year, the new license will be in place. The old license lasts till February of 2021, and it is this MMU. It's our responsibility to get this done, and so this agreement talks about that and how that happens and what we're doing to make that a reality. Well, with that, that's all I've got. And I'm sorry I spent so much time, but it was good for me to walk through it with you as well, as this is my first time. So I appreciate your patience.
Thank you, Dave. We'll open up for any questions the council has for Dave.
I just have a suggestion here. We see this joint agreement year to year, and a lot of it stays the same, but there are some important changes that occur each year. Would it be possible to maybe highlight or underline the changes so we can spend more time concentrating on what's being changed rather than what's staying the same?
Yes. Mr. Mayor, council member, I tell you, if you look at the front page there, it talks about the changes. Right at the next, you got the front page again, Kyle? There you go. You'll see that there's a line item. Let's just take the first one, payment in lieu of taxes pilot. And if you follow that across, it says modified agreement and attachment. So when you have a modified agreement, that means that the body of the agreement has changed somewhat. If you see modified attachments, basically all the difference in this agreement are the numbers. And those will always change in every agreement every year because our costs have increased to provide that service for you. So you will see that typically on every one of those agreements that the attachment will be modified. Professional engineering services is the only exception to that rule because we took a look at that together and felt like the current compensation is adequate. And so that might help you next time when you look at this to find out what has just been a number change, which is modified agreement or a modified attachment, or a fundamental change in the agreement itself, which is modified agreement. Does that help a little bit?
Right. And what I'm looking for is the fundamental changes in the agreement. And I realize that the numbers change from year to year, but if there's important changes in the language, that those changes should be highlighted so we can see exactly if anything's being changed or not. And that happens a lot with agreements that come before the council. We get to see the amended agreement, and it highlights what's being changed and what's not being changed. So thank you.
We can do that.
Okay, other input, other questions?
The only question I have, you did a nice presentation, thank you. But the request I have is your committee meets on Tuesday nights. And a lot of times I hear our committee liaison, John D. Kramer, saying I had to leave the meeting early. Right? I think of last year, I think maybe it was 2 years ago, your audit fell on a city council night. So we as council members couldn't stay for it. I think it'd be in the best interest of all that John can stay for the whole meeting. So I request that your committee look at maybe changing the night to do that so it does not interfere with city council.
Usually it's an off week,
Right.
but there's times when well, typically I would say you needed to change, which hit a Tuesday. So
But
those are the times that hit.
It's a good point, and Dave, you were nodding your head, so.
Yeah, we will look into that. And we've also have some internal conflicts with commissioners as well. And so we'll take another look at that and see what we could find. But I agree with you. I would like to have John there all the time as well.
Yeah, we shouldn't have boards or commissions meetings time conflict with the council meetings. So any other input? If not, you have the recommendation. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by Craig. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Steve.
the only thing that I would bring up is that the MMU chair said that they've got a heck of a deal, or that the price on the engineering was found to be adequate. I think that we discussed this a little bit. I think that MMU is getting a great deal on the cost of city engineering, and we should look at that on an annual basis as well to make it beneficial for both parties, but make it a good deal for both parties. So that's all I had to say.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Any other discussion on the motion?
Just a comment on the engineering, that's the bare minimum amount. We too, just like MMU does for GIS, we in turn bill additional per time and project on engineering. So that is the bare minimum amount. There is actually more fees paid on an annual basis.
Just my comment. It's a base number rather than a only number, minimum number.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Kyle?
Mayor Burns,
Yes?
Craig Schaefer,
Yes.
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
yes,
Jim Lozinski.
Yes.
And the motion does pass. Thank you, Dave. We'll move then to agenda item number 10, review of 2021 on sale intoxicating liquor fees. This was brought forward. I believe I mentioned it last time, and then there's been other discussion and input from the bar and restaurant owners and proprietors in the community, and then also with the shutdown notice that happened by executive order last week, last Friday night, to last for 4 weeks. It even brings more importance to this agenda item. So Kyle, I'll turn it to you. You have compiled, some data and input and some alternate recommendations.
Thank you, Mayor Burns. Earlier this fall, last few weeks, several days, license holders have reached out to the city requesting relief for their 2020-2021 license fees. As you said, in response to COVID-19. Attached in the packet is a proposal spreadsheet that lays out fees that have been collected, reimbursements that have been made, as well as proposed fees to be reimbursed. I'll pull that up here. There's a lot of information on here, but we'll just kind of take one at a time, or just the on-sale license holders, if we can start there. So yearly fees paid for an on-sale intoxicating liquor license and a Sunday intoxicating liquor license total $3,200, the blue line here. Earlier this year in the spring, the city council took action to issue a reimbursement for the first the stay-at-home order issued by the governor. That reimbursement, as you can see there, is reflected equally for the amounts paid at that time. So that not every line is the same. So it can get a little confusing, but Overall, with the proposals on top here in yellow, the total reimbursements fees, the total 2020 fees after reimbursement are the same for every license holder. That was important, except for one here. This license holder does not have a Sunday license. That is why it is lower than the rest. So it is equal. I do have the fees here broken down total by day, by month. So this is the 2020 proposal here for the reimbursements, as well as we can talk about 2021 at the same time here. It is a recommendation from staff to council to the proposed 2021 license fee would be reduced by 50% and only collected for the first 6 months, so January through June. So really think of it as a quarter of a fee would be collected at 50% of 50%. So the impact here you can see below from what fees were either reimbursed or not collected. Those the total amount paid out or not collected for 2020 and for 2021. Important to note that the 2021 number may increase depending on further council action. So there's a lot of information here. Chamber President Brad Gruhat is also on the Zoom call this evening. He had shared a letter with the City Council earlier this week from license holders as well. So if the council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, we'll open up for questions and discussion from the council.
Kyle, I believe last time we figured it, you figured it to the day of when the governor closed, correct? Isn't that how we did it back in the spring?
Correct.
Because and the reason I bring that up is I get an odd feeling that on December 18th, our bars are not going to open up again. And that's what I know Craig and I chatted about this, and I do agree with the 50% reduction. The only thing I'd throw in there is the caveat of refunding them for every day that they're closed too. So if we don't reopen the bars until January 20th, that they're not paying for a liquor fee on those days either. I think that's only fair if they cannot be open for business. And maybe this will go away by December 18th, but it doesn't seem to be trending that way. So I would support that, and I would put the caveat that every day they're closed in 2021, that they are also refunded for that liquor license fee. And I believe you said it's easy to figure out per day what it costs.
Correct. I do have each license broken down by day. It's not perfect, but it's the closest we can get. And I would agree that would follow previous council action to reimburse for the full days that license holders were closed.
And that would include 2020 also.
Yes.
Correct.
Right.
Both 2020 and 2021.
Other input from the council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just want to step up in support too of what Jim said, and we've talked this back and forth, and I've talked to Sharon about it also. And I know that there's a lot of our businesses that are really suffering through this, and it's probably not a lot in the large picture, but it's things that we can do. And as a community, we need to continue to support and cover as best we can all of our business partners and business members within the community, and try to give them the best chance that we can moving forward. So I'm really in support of doing this.
Just wanted to throw in as well that, like Craig said, this is part of what we're doing. And just to point out, we're going to have another discussion item a little bit later on tonight, item 15, that really ties in as well. So this may seem like a small part, not exactly what was totally requested, but I think this rolled in with what we're at least intending to do on item 15. I think we're trying to help out as much as realistically possible for the city as well.
Other input?
Mr. Mayor, fellow council members, I would just like to go back a little bit. and remind all of you that these same businesses have suffered not only since 2020, but prior to that with our fiasco at CVB. They counted on CVB using their tax money that they were generating, sales tax money that they were generating for the CVB to promote Marshall and added events and bring added business to their town. As we all know, that didn't happen. The CVB director at that time, as we all know the consequences, but so these organizations and businesses, I should say, came forth before the CVB and said, what are you going to do for us now? We lost out on a year and a half, 18 months, 2 years with a business or additional business because one guy was putting the money in his pocket. So they've suffered for more than 2020. I'm in full support of giving them a total reduction for 2021. We have cut, or the government has, I should say, cut their revenue stream off totally. They still employ people. Those 10 people or those 4 people or those 15 people pay taxes in this town, but if they don't have a job working in these bars and restaurants, they're not going to be able to afford to pay their rent. They're not going to be able to afford to buy groceries, put gas in their cars, whatever. So it's a domino effect. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but I think that's at least what we can do. These businesses that have suffered for more than just a year, they've suffered for probably at least the last 2.5 to 3 years. And again, I would like to see that the city help them out as much as they possibly can. They suffered through that CVB fiasco. And again, we can't put a dollar value on that, but every one of them seen a decrease in business because of no added promotion. So I guess I feel that we should go above and beyond what we're recommending and give them total recap or relief for 2021. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Russ. Thanks for bringing that up about CVB. It's appropriate for you to bring that up as the council liaison to the Convention and Visitors Bureau. Any other input from the council?
Kyle, I think we talked about this, that what we're proposing here, or you're proposing, is in line with what other cities in our area are doing regarding the license fees.
It's a mixed bag when it comes to that. There are a number of cities that are more or less doing what we're proposing tonight, reimbursing for license fees for the time that the license holder was not able to use that fee. There are some cities that are reimbursing the entire amount. There doesn't appear to be a rhyme or reason, if you will, for why cities are doing it each particular way. It's really been left up to each particular individual city, and that I'm speaking only to the 2020 fees. Reaching out to some cities in our area and throughout the state, there hasn't been a lot of discussion on what cities are doing for 2021 yet, because I feel that those discussions are happening with their councils now. So I'll speak to that.
Other input.
Mr. Mayor, wasn't there some conversations today regarding from the governor about relief of fees coming maybe potentially from the state? Did anybody hear that?
Well, there is the governor at the press conference, probably other people saw that. And then there's also a Republican recommendation also, and there's a lot of commonality between those two recommendations that I believe would be considered in the special session. And I believe that's going to be scheduled for next week from what I was reading. And part of that is some relief of sales tax or a sales tax holiday. Part of that was a relief of some license and fees. And some of that is for some direct support targeted at the most impacted businesses. Sharon, I believe you have the press release in front of you. What am I missing?
There's both a Republican proposal and a Democrat, Governor Walz proposal. So they vary a little bit, but same line, offering relief as the mayor stated. We'll see where they come together on this. I think the governor stated today that he will call special session if there is an agreement prior to December 12th. And I don't know if December 12th is a date where he has to renew his public health executive status or not. I know that that's special sessions required when he does that. There's in addition, I just want to mention one other thing. I know the governor's proposal also includes extending unemployment benefits. I think that'll be a key factor as well for our local economy. And as a follow-up to Councilmember Labatt's comment about our employees and how they contribute to the local economy.
There is also hope, as the governor had in his press conference late last week, of the federal CARES Act revised version that's been debated by Congress.
I have a
Mr.
quick.
Mayor, oops, sorry, Jim, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, you guys had mentioned reimbursement of fees. And the question I have is that a reimbursement to the businesses that they pay the fees? So do we shoot ourselves in the foot at this point by eliminating fees? Or should we maybe table this to wait to see what the state government does? Because I don't want to shoot the city in the foot by saying we eliminate fees, and all of a sudden we come back at the end of December. We got to put these fees back in so you can pay them, so the governor can reimburse, so the state can reimburse you. I guess with this new information, it kind of throws this whole thing kind of in limbo, doesn't it?
I think though, Jim, the discussion today was on state fees that are imposed, not local fees.
That's correct. There's no direction from the legislature to tell us what to do on local liquor license fees.
So there's no reimbursement towards liquor license locally. So this is where our chamber needs to get onto their Senate people and encourage that too, to help us out. Because as we eliminate fees, I know that it hurts into our levy. Somebody has to pay for it. So if we eliminate liquor fees, we got to pick that cost up someplace else by raising the levy on the rest of the folks that provide that revenue. And still, even if the liquor store or the bars are open at 50%, we still need that police protection to make sure those people are all getting home safe. So it's kind of a catch-22, completely eliminating them, because somebody has to pick up the cost of losing that, or we lay off a law enforcement officer simply because we don't have the bars open, so we don't need them patrolling much at night. So it is a chicken and egg question here on how we do this.
Jim, well, I agree it's a chicken and egg, but I think we've got, and again, it's a financial hit, but couldn't we find the money and just our liquor stores has way and above sales. Could we take the money from the liquor stores to help our restaurants and bars? I don't know that. I'm just asking that question. Could we do something different to help? The tap room is considerably a lot less than a $3,200 bill that our on sale people or our bars pay. So his expense or his hit isn't going to be quite as expensive as the other bars and restaurants. Again, they're suffering because of people not being able to come into their restaurant and eat, whether it be a hamburger or a full meal, because now the state shut them down for 4 weeks. And again, Jim, who knows? Dr. Meister has said, this could go on for another 12 months. Who knows? What happens if these people lose all their business through the month of December and into January? We've cut the revenue stream off. And again, I say we, the government, has cut their revenue stream off. It's just a question. Could we take excess money or the money from the liquor store to help offset these fees? And I don't know that answer, but I'll put that out there as a question.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I'd like to kind of weigh in on some of this. First of all, I'm fully in support of when their bar is closed and they can't sell the liquor, I fully support waiving the entire fee. I think it's reasonable to put everything else at a 50%. We can come back and look at this if the hardship continues. The beauty of being an elected official, if we make a mistake this week, we can come back in 2 weeks and fix it. And so we can look at that. But I know that coming down on the agenda, we're also looking at some additional relief, which I think does somewhat what Russ is talking about with city funds when we're looking at doing some additional work on some COVID relief. And I think that's also proposed further down. So I think it's important that we look for those opportunities to provide that. But again, Councilman Lizinski is absolutely correct that we have to still be mindful that we also have a business per chance to operate, and we can't trade the health of one for another either. So I think we have to do everything we can reasonably and financially possible to help. We also have to do our first job, and that's to protect the city and operate the city's business. So I think that we need to have this. These are good discussions, and I think that the council and our staff and administration have done a good job up till now at looking for these opportunities to match the need with the possibility and brought forth some good recommendations. And I think we have taken good action and shown due diligence and due care in trying to support and assist our businesses and our business people when and where we can. So I see us continuing to do that.
Thank you, Craig. Other discussion?
Mr. Mayor, one last question. Since we don't know what the state's going to do, and we're going to have a future item on our agenda tonight, would it be possible, I mean, is there an urgency to take action on this tonight, or could we wait until our December or even our January meeting?
I think there is urgency, Russ. And the urgency is that the sooner that we take action and provide some clarity of what the city's action at this time could be for those business owners, the better. I mean, as Councilmember Schaefer said, we can address things in the future as we know more, but what we do know now is the liquor fees, license fees that have been paid in 2020 and what our policy had been prior with the shutdown, and then the recommendation to continue that with the reimbursement when now we have a continued shutdown, as well as the language to continue that into 2021 should the shutdown continue, and the reduced fee based on the reduced capacity. So those are things that both on the fees that have and will be paid, those are things that we do know. Now, Kyle, you were going to make a point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Only to add that the urgency from the administrative side is that these licenses are due to the state before the end of the year. Those licenses still need to be approved by the city council. That'll take place tentatively at the first meeting in December, which would give us just enough time to finish everything up at the city and get it to the state for their final approval. So I just bring that up as well.
Thank you for that information.
Hey,
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Steve.
So I've been quiet on this, but I'm going to talk now. I think that from my personal viewpoint, our business as a city is to serve our citizens. I agree that we have to look at the levy. So Councilmember Lizinski is absolutely right. However, without businesses to pay our taxes and pay the fair share to run the operation, there's no operating income. If our businesses all go out because of this pandemic, we're going to be in trouble no matter what, and we're going to have to make the necessary cuts as a city to our business because we're going to suffer equally with our citizens. So I'm in complete agreement of waiving this fee like Councilmember Labatt has recommended. I think that we need to do our fair share. And again, we can always readjust it. But I think at this point in time, given the uncertainty and to give the goodwill of the CVB fiasco, I think right now we're in a pickle. And I think that if times get better or we realize that we're going to be harder, we can readjust and maybe increase a little bit. But my philosophy would be to waive the fee.
Steve, are you talking about waiving the fee for the whole year or for just the first 6 months?
I would say the first 6 months, but we'd have to look at it going forward. And, look at this year too.
I have a question. So are we talking about waiving the fee for 2020 or 2021? What is being proposed here? Or both?
Well, I think you're right, Glenn. There's been both that have been talked about, but at the minimum for 2020, the reimbursing the fee for the period of time beginning last Friday night and extending through the shutdown that will go into December, towards the end of December and perhaps longer. And then there is discussion about what to do for 21, whether or not there is a continued shutdown or whether there's a partial reduction in capacity.
Kyle, so the total fees here are around 40-some thousand, is that correct?
For our on-sale licenses, yes, it's, I believe, right around 48,000, just shy of 50,000.
Okay, well, I was looking at the sheet you have there.
Yes,
Hey,
this
that's the collected, okay.
this number is not a accurate number for the total year. That is only what we have collected to date.
So what would you estimate roughly the total fees that would be waived if we waive them for 2020?
Roughly $49,000.
And with regard to, I think Councilman Labatt was talking about the liquor store funds. I'd like to know from the city administrator, would that be a possibility to use liquor fund money to reimburse the city for the revenue lost because of the license fee forgiveness?
We could. I think I would prefer to just use the general fund balance, not the liquor store. There is the attempt to tie in what the governor has done for executive orders in terms of shutting down bars and restaurants to the city, and then turning some direct line that all the lost revenue is going to the liquor store. I don't really believe that to be true. I think, obviously consumers are making choices because of some of it, but I don't think it's all attributed to the bars and restaurants being shut down. So I think it would be better if you want to use a fund balance. I would use a general fund balance. I think in a previous meeting, and we'll talk about this later too, when I did a look at the 2020 revenues and expenditures at the end of September, I think we're doing fairly well in 2020 with reduced expenditures, almost to the point of 400,000. Now, we all know that if we are really concerned going forward, and I'm concerned, and I know some of you are too, and we know right now we've got some reduced revenue and sales tax, for example. We may need to use some of that fund balance for other areas for city operations. So, but I do think there is an opportunity to use the fund balance from 2020 or previous years. Our fund balance policy was revised to reduce it down to 40%. That gives us some leeway too. So with or without 2020, we've got some fund balance reserves that we could use. So sorry for the long answer, but that's my recommendation would be to use general fund and not the liquor store.
The reason I would say the liquor fund money is that if it's all taken out of the general fund, it makes our general fund financial statements look less appealing, and if there's a deficit, it would increase the deficit. Whereas if we transferred it from the liquor store, it wouldn't hurt the looks of the general fund financial statements.
Yeah, I think we're well off enough on our reserves that it's not going to be a blemish on the fund balance for the general. And I also think because the liquor store, or excuse me, the license fees for these establishments, it goes into the general fund. So let's keep it in the same fund. But I'm not an accountant either, so if you can sway your other members to do so, I'm not going to argue against you, but I think it should be the general fund.
John?
I do have a question back to Kyle on your recommendations, just clarification. You have to approve and reimburse the 2020 license fees for on-sale liquor, wine, tap room as listed in the council packet. Is that basically the daily reduction of all the times that was closed? Is that my understanding that correct?
Correct. Those are the yellow highlighted columns here. The November, these are just my labels. The November reimbursement would be for the 4-week closure. The 2020 50% cap reimbursement, capacity reimbursement is as close as approximate to the length of time bars and restaurants have been able to operate at 50% capacity. And then you can see, I've called it an equalizer reimbursement. That gets us equal so that every license holder at the end column is paying the same license fee.
Okay.
So it maybe got a little more complicated on my end than I needed it to, but
no,
that got us to the equal.
And that's
result.
fine. And then so we go back to the recommendation as to then really what the recommendation is so far is to approve a 50% reduction on the 2021 and for the first half of 2021.
Correct.
So, and that gets you enough information then to provide to the state what they need in December. Is that
correct? So realistically, I don't need a fee amount to be collected necessarily. That decision would be left up to the council whether or not that portion is done. It's the approval of the licenses that the council needs to take action on. So
does everything to do with the
separate
fees charging? It's just whether we approve the.
We do report the fees collected to the state, and that is entered in with their system, but it wouldn't delay anything whether or not whether the fees remain the same or not.
And the only change to that recommendation would be should the closure extend into 2021 or be reinstated in 2021, and there would be a reimbursement of the fee for
which would not affect the renewal of the license.
Right.
That would not be affected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, a point of clarification, and do we need this recommendation number 1 for finishing out 2020? That should be a separate motion, and then whatever motion comes up on recommendation number 2 should be a separate and second motion. Is that correct?
Well, it wouldn't have to be, but Craig, you are correct. That might be a little more straightforward in terms of discussion on a separate motion.
Right. Okay.
Well, I was going to suggest, as I listen to my fellow council members, I'd be willing, after Steve and Russ, waive the fees for the first half of 2021, and we revisit this in May, because if we're back open, we need to revisit what those would be. So I would make a motion that we waive the fees for the first half of 2021 with it brought back to council in May. And then we'll just make that a motion and go from there, and we'll deal with 2020 after this motion.
I'll second that.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Craig. Discussion on that motion.
So again, clarification, Jim, that no fees collected for the first 6 months of 2021.
Correct.
Okay.
And the fiscal impact on that, Kyle, will be roughly just shy of 25,000.
Correct. And just another clarification, the recommendation, is it for on-sale license holders only, or is it for all?
Yes, off sale is still in business.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion?
And Jim, as part of your motion, should it be stated then that we revisit it in May or June or whatever?
Yes, revisit it and come back to council in May.
And that was included in his motion.
Yep.
Other discussion on the motion?
Kyle?
Yes.
Is that a normal process where you maybe have a 0 fee for the first 6 months and then later decide what the next 6 months is going to be? I mean, is it normal to have half-year contracts like that and fees?
To be fair, I don't know if COVID has been normal for any of us, but in our ordinance, on sale license holders do have the option to only pay half of their fee, with the first half being due by January 1 and the second half being due by June 1st. So it's not uncommon for license holders to only pay half up front. So,
and that's applicable to our on-sale liquor license, not so much the wine license.
correct. That's correct. That's only in our ordinance for our on-sale intoxicating license holders, not wine or tap room or on-sale beer.
So this motion would actually apply to all of the on-sale. Yes.
Yep.
And I was to make the comment, in a usual year, we wouldn't be talking about this. So with the pandemic, I think this is a good exception.
Yeah, I would concur with that, Mr. Lozinski, that there's nothing normal about this year, and we're all charting or navigating uncharted waters, and we have to be a little nimble on this. And like Councilmember Schaefer said, if we find that we did something wrong, we can amend it and correct it and learn from it. But I think this is the right thing to do for right now.
The other thing that in one of the proposals from the state that was laid out today is allowing some increase of on sale from the on sale license holders as a way of and dealing with their inventory. So other discussion on the motion.
Could you restate the motion, please?
Kyle?
The motion by Councilmember Lozinski was to waive the on-sale license fees for the first half in 2021 and have the council discuss the item again in May of 2021.
Okay, other discussion on the motion.
Well, I can support the motion, Jim and Mr. Mayor. I'd still like to see the full year, but I'll support the motion as presented.
Any other discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Kyle?
Mayor Burns?
Yes.
Craig Schaefer?
Yes.
Steve Meister?
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler?
Yes.
John DeCramer?
Yes.
Russ Labatt?
Yes.
Jim Lozinski?
Yes.
And the motion does pass. So now it would be appropriate for a motion on recommendation number 1, the 2020 reimbursement for the period of time when bars and restaurants are closed by the most recent executive order.
And I would make that motion sticking with what we had previously done in the earlier year, that they get reimbursed for the days that they are closed for the rest of the year.
Motion passed. Motion by Jim, seconded by Steve. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote.
I have a question. Okay. So how does that relate to what is put before us as far as the proposal from the city clerk then?
I guess, Glenn, my thought is that I think the mayor, if we're closed till December 31st, the staff now has a direction where they can just reimburse them through December 31st. So if they're closed for those extra 13 days, Kyle already knows what his direction is to take care of the liquor license, reimburse them for those 13 days.
When I'm looking at his Excel spreadsheet here, it shows proposed for November, proposed 50% cap, proposed equalizer reimbursement. Are those all applying to yet, or how does that work?
Kyle, you want to address that?
Yes, that would be the intent, would be for all of the highlighted columns to be reimbursed with the direction from council to reimburse license holders for additional days they may be closed in 2020.
Okay. And really your equalizer is the ones that have prepaid, right? So.
Right. We can call it whatever we want. That was just what it's named currently.
Or in other words, if it hasn't been paid, it's not going to get reimbursed.
Right. As you can see, there are some that are more or less than others on this spreadsheet.
Other discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Kyle?
Mayor Burns?
Yes.
Craig Schaefer?
Yes.
Steve Meister?
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
yes,
Jim Lozinski.
Yes.
The motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 11, consider the approval of the request for the proposal for the new City of Marshall Comprehensive Plan. Sharon, can we start with you on this?
Sure. This is an item that's been discussed amongst the staff and the council for at least the time that I've been here. It is a strategic plan goal of the city. And I know that our staff, Ilya Gutman and Jason Anderson, have been working on a request for proposal. And I will let Jason explain the RFP in front of the council.
And I'll turn it over to Ilya Gutman, actually, who's on the line.
Thank you, Mayor Council. So we are requesting approval to proceed with the request for proposal to write a new City of Marshall comprehensive plan at the moment. An approval will not require commitment to hiring or paying anything for this thing. If it's approved, we will bring the proposal back to the council at a future meeting when we have the proposal from the consultant. According to the League of Minnesota Cities, a comprehensive plan is the expression of the community's vision for the future and a strategic map to reach that vision. It's a very important tool to guide our future development. Usually comprehensive plans include backgrounds, community vision, and usually community vision is achieved through the multiple meetings, public meetings, and service in the community. And then recommendations for the future, how to get to that vision. And usually they address zoning, transportation, economic development, housing, and environment in the city. The last comprehensive plan in the city of Marshall was done in 1996. It was partially updated in 2004, but I want to point out that the one before the 96 comprehensive plan was done in actually 1981. So there was 15 years between the previous one and the last one. General recommendations usually to update comprehensive plan every 10 to 15 years. And we can see that our plan is much older than that. We are actually behind most of the comparable cities with the age of our comprehensive plan. The proposal that is included in your packet try to explain the scope, the partnership with the public, outcome, and also includes the schedule for the writing the comprehensive plan. So I will probably stop here and we'll take questions.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of comments I would make. I actually was mayor when we went through the process, and I know that is the comprehensive plan process. If it's done well, it takes time. It takes a lot of involvement. I think the scope of the RFP, is laid out well. My only concern is the time schedule, whether or not this could be completed by October of 2021, and if that gives enough time for adequate review. I've read a number of comprehensive plans from the communities around the state, and the ones that are well done are those that have good community input, and that one purpose is a planning and zoning document or a framework for planning and zoning. The good ones really are more comprehensive than that. They take into account the community vision, the community strategic direction, and that involves really broad input from all aspects. So while the proposal has the planning commission as the public commission that's primarily involved, I would see probably most, if not all of our boards and commissions to having some input, as well as general public input, as well as other entities within the community, be it the Chamber of Commerce or the Southwest Minnesota State University or the healthcare system. But all of that will take time, and we know that we're in pandemic, and so I think I would support going out for the RFPs, but I think we ought to kind of give some thought to how can this be done well and can it be done within that timeline? So Ilya, that would be my input on that.
And I'm definitely open to changing the scheduling and extending the final presentation. I tried to go by what other cities did. I noticed that our plan, actually the previous plan, took longer than this thing. And one of that, I think we have two options. We can either change the schedule right now before going out with the RFP, or we can go out and then talk to our selected consultant and ask them how much time they need and adjust the plan at that time.
Other input from the council?
I guess I would have to agree with the time element. I'd like to see this maybe moved out till, or at least suggested end of 2021, just to give enough time because, as the mayor was talking about, we've got other entities, SMSU and, Avera, they're in a situation, similar to what we do is we're not exactly sure what 2021 is going to look like, but we, to really do a lot of planning. So it gives ourselves some more time to do it. I like the idea of doing going out for this proposal. I think we've gone 24 years on the last one, and told once before, if you don't know where you're going, you're going to end up someplace else, and we may not like where we're ending up. So we need to know which direction we're going, how we're doing things. So I'd be in favor of this, but extending it out till end of the year.
Other input from the council?
Yes, this is Councilmember Meister. I agree with that, with what Mr. DeCramer said. I think that we need a map. I think the map is a vision of where we need to go as a city, and I think it takes a lot of input. And we need to get that input from the people and our citizens of the city of where we want to go and how we want to do it and how we're going to get there. So I would be in agreement with Mr. DeCramer.
And I too would be in agreement with what was being said. If we extend this, and maybe Sharon, I see that if I know there's no cost for the RFPs, but if we proceed with the action, we have to take it out of reserves. Is this something that could be put in the budget for even 2022? And then, extend it out, start at mid-year 2021 and extend it out, take it a year, they go through 2022. Maybe the pandemic will be over with by then, and we'll have a clearer picture for everybody.
We could levy for it in 2022. It is a one-time expense, so not a bad use of reserves. And I know Ilya said they're done every 10 to 15. He's more knowledgeable than I am. I thought it would be a 20-year document. So another potential good use of reserves, because you're not going to see it come around that often. But that is really the discretion of the council. We will, in effect, budget for it. It's going to be listed as an expenditure, but the revenue source, if you want to change it later from reserves to levy, we certainly can add that in 2022 at that time.
I think also most of these, there's payments earlier on, so I'm assuming we wouldn't be able to delay the payment until 2022.
I doubt it.
Yeah, so if we're going to start in 2021, we'd have to pay it in 2021.
But yeah, we can always levy for it later and replenish, in effect, the reserves.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you, Sharon, for that. And I agree with that. It's that, we're behind the 8 ball already, and we know the difficult year that we're going to have budget-wise coming up. And again, we don't know how long that's going to continue. So our current plan is 16 years old. Maybe we start the process, and by the time we get around to it, it's 18 years old. I don't think we've lost anything. I agree it has to be done, but I would just like to see this, because again, 2021 is going to be a difficult budget year. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the request for proposals be filed for the plan and look at extending out the schedule, the proposed schedule in the RFP to take us at least out into the end of 2021.
I would second that motion.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Steve. Discussion?
The only discussion I have, and I just want to clarify this, getting the RFP, I know I ask this question every time, but for the public, this cost us nothing to get the RFP or get the proposal. So we can choose at that time in January 6th if we want to go forward with this, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other
Can I
just
add something?
Sharon?
I just want to add that, you know, it's not just a document that sits on the shelf. This is one of those that gets used daily by the planning and zoning administrator and office. And there are examples where the comprehensive plan did not match up with potential development. So you can look at one aspect of this and see as an expense. The flip side to that is if you have an updated comprehensive plan, it could mean economic development, and it could potentially spur it because we've looked at current zoning and made it better for the growth of the community. So I see it as on the flip side of helping tax capacity. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. And that was going to be my comment. Is I really see this as much of an EDA tool as it almost is a zoning tool.
And John?
My only comment is, maybe with, we didn't comment before, and a proposal due on January 6th. We've got Thanksgiving and Christmas in there, and we're extending out the tail end of it. I see no reason why we couldn't push that January 6th or that whole schedule out, say maybe a couple of weeks or something. Maybe give a consultant a little bit more time and not press it. Usually if we're pressing somebody for proposal, it gets a little higher in cost than normal. So I'd like to see that January 6th just pushed out, at least a couple of weeks maybe.
I was going to suggest that we will push that date out as well.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in for a moment, we'll look at the timeline based on this input. I think the other section we'll take a hard look at is the public participation section and make sure that we have enough built-in minimum required meetings, because I think that's a section based on what we're hearing tonight that we'll want to amend and probably increase participation.
And it's already there, we will just review it. The proposal does spell that thing, and we will just review it.
Okay. Any other discussion on the motion?
I have a few comments. First of all, how often does the city council use the comprehensive plan? How informed are we as to what's in it? How much use are we getting from it as a city council? And it would make sense for the city council to get together in a work session and actually go through and see what we have right now. And is an update adequate for now? And we wait a couple of years and actually do a full-blown comprehensive plan. I think it would make sense to see what we have first, see what's changed, see how much work it would be to update things. And, with the current economic situation, I'm not sure we want to be going out and spending $50,000, $60,000 for something if we may not need it right now. And it is hard to project in the future. The further you project in the future, the less certain you are as to what's going to happen. And plans need to be adjusted. Every few years, you got to adjust your plans because circumstances change. And so I think I would favor looking at what we have right now and see what we have and see what needs to be changed and how much of a change we need to make.
I would encourage all the council to review the comprehensive plan. I know I can't speak for anyone else on the council, but I would assume some are like me that you look at it probably about once every few weeks as issues come up, especially as it deals with zoning or the some of our land use issues. And I think as we review that, you can see we have the goals that were set up have been accomplished. We have overgrown the areas that had been planned for expansion within the city. So the we have accomplished some of the main infrastructure needs that were outlined. Primarily, our water and stormwater and flood control have been accomplished. And some of the other goals, including healthcare, have been accomplished. So I think as individual council members review the comprehensive plan, you'll know it's a historical document. It's good information, but it's not information that's going to help you into the future.
And I would like to comment that I believe my 7 years I spent on planning and zoning, and I think it was Jason or maybe Ilya made the comment that it was used a lot on planning and zoning when we make recommendations to the council on the different zoning neighborhoods and other things going on in town. And I think to myself is if this comprehensive plan had been updated 3-4 years ago, we could very well have snagged the dog treat factory instead of chasing it to another community, because that's something that needs to address is those big box stores, and they're not addressed in our comprehensive plan. So, and we can't lose businesses, and this will help us attract businesses. And just getting a quote is not costing us any money at this point.
Mr. Mayor, may I comment here?
Go ahead, Ilya.
Generally, Sharon is right. The plan is for 20 years. However, the general recommendation is to update them every 10, 15 years. They're probably intentionally written for longer with the understanding that they will be updated earlier. The Twin City area, the metro cities actually are required to update them every 10 years. So obviously we're not in the metro, but generally that's 10, 15 years applies to everyone. I also want to explain that every single rezoning project in theory is supposed to be in compliance with the comprehensive plan. So every time we rezone anything, we have to make sure that it follows the comprehensive plan, and sometimes it's difficult. We even had to change it at least once. So, and I mentioned it in my memo that it is difficult to do the zoning now because of the old plan.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Kyle, would you take the vote?
Mayor Burns,
Yes.
Craig Schaefer,
Yes.
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Still muted.
Glenn, you're muted.
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
Yes.
Oh,
Jim
Yes.
excuse me. I was trying to find the stuff on here. My vote was actually no. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Kyle, you have the vote recorded. The motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 12, to consider the approval of the amendment to the 2021 paid on-call wage schedule. I'll call on Sheila Doves, Human Resources Director.
Say, Mayor, this is Jim. I was wondering if, may I address the council first on this topic, and then if there's questions, maybe Sheila can jump in?
Certainly. Go ahead, Chief.
Right, thank you. The agenda item before you, and I'm going to try to be brief. I know this is going to be a long meeting, but the agenda item before you was brought before the Personnel Committee a week ago. And at that time, we had some very good and very long discussion related to the Southwest Chemical Assessment Team and the value that and the important role that it plays within our emergency response to Marshall and to our region. Just some quick background information on the Chemical Assessment Team is that it was formed in 2002 under the umbrella of the Minnesota Homeland Security Emergency Management Office, who provided oversight and all the funding to all the chemical assessment teams in the state. But even in 2002, the Southwest Chemical Assessment Team was unique in the sense that only a couple existed that didn't align with any other fire departments, and it was a standalone team not affiliated with the other fire departments. This concept worked for us. It worked well, and it worked well because we had strong participation from different industries within our region. But over the years, we began to see the number of members decline. And have had an open hiring list for many years. There's difficulty in finding people, and probably some of the reasons is likely due to the required commitment for the CAT team, the training that goes with it to become a hazmat technician, and really probably some of the hazards of the job. In recent years, the Southwest CAT team became the only team that was not aligned out of all the other 10 teams in the state with the fire department. In 2018, the Department of Public Safety transferred oversight of the CAT team from HSCM into the State Fire Marshal's office. And this change at that time made me extremely nervous for a number of different reasons. But after several meetings with the State Fire Marshal's office, I believed they wanted us to succeed. And if our current standalone model worked, our concept worked, great. But if it didn't, they really strongly encouraged us to align our chemical assessment team into the Marshall Fire Department. 2 years ago is when I had my very first conversation with Quentin regarding the goal of keeping the Southwest CAT team based out in Marshall, and if the Marshall Fire Department would be willing to play a role in making that happen. With the significant decline in the numbers again that we started to see, and as of lately, the numbers that have started to decline considerably, both Quentin and I had a lot of discussion, not just discussion amongst ourselves, but discussion with the State Fire Marshal's office, and who really seems to be more than willing to help us move forward and transition this into the Marshall Fire Department and keep this as an asset to Marshall and to our region. And just so you know, we service a 14 county area with our chemical assessment team. Try to be brief here, but if you see your agenda item report, you'll see that there's 2 proposals that we're asking the council to consider tonight. One would be to support the creation of a new truck company within the Marshall Fire Department with a captain and a lieutenant position to help give some leadership and direction and guidance to the team. And then the second part of that is to transition our current CAT team members into the Marshall Fire Department at their current rate of compensation, and then compensate any firefighter from this point forward that receives their hazmat technician certification at a rate of $20 per hour from their current rate of $17.77. Maybe I'll stop there, and I don't know if Quentin wants to chime in or if anybody has any specific questions. I'll stop.
Thank you, Jim. Questions or other input?
I have questions. So the funding used to come from Homeland Security, or?
It did. They provided the oversight, council member, to all the CAT teams. And 2 years ago is when that changed. And at the time, like I said, I had maybe some concerns, and I actually probably shared some of these concerns with council member Schaefer because he knew a little bit about this stuff at the time. I was concerned, again, of us not being affiliated with the fire department. And it's really been a good working relationship with them in the last 2 years. And it, to me, really makes sense after working with them and getting to know them. Again, to think that we're doing it better than anybody else, I think is wrong, because we're, again, the only team in the state of Minnesota that is not affiliated with their fire department.
I think it's important, Jim. Yeah, I think part of Glenn's question is to make sure he's not confused. It is still being reimbursed by the state. It's just through the fire marshal's office now and not HSCM.
That's correct. That's true.
Will that change if we take this action?
No, that's not going to change. They'll continue to be the oversight and the funding source where all those dollars come through. You know, and this is probably more than you want to know at this point in time. I can see that agreement that we have in place and continuing, but hopefully those amounts will continue to increase. We're currently under a 5-year agreement with the state, and they provide $300,000, so $60,000 a year for our CAT team to operate. That doesn't include, you know, some of the capital items that they funnel our way from the equipment that we receive. Case in point, my first meeting with the state fire marshal's office up at Camp Ripley, they sent back with me over close to $50,000 worth of equipment that can be used and utilized by our fire department if we make this change. And the last meeting, Quentin can maybe share this and speak to this. Again, they sent maybe $1,500, close to probably $2,000 worth of equipment back that we can use with our Marshall Fire Department. So it's really a win-win, Councilmember Bearcooler, and it just makes sense.
Is there any concern that the state funding in the future will end and we'll be stuck with the whole budget ourselves?
I don't see that happening. I just don't. I think the transition from HSEM to State Fire Marshal's office has only strengthened that position within the state and our agreement moving forward. I think if that was the case, they'd be encouraging us to dissolve. And that was my concern early on. And that's not been the case. They want us here and they want us to serve our 14 county area.
And I think it's also important to know that we went through this with great detail also with the personnel committee and with HR and with Jim and with Quentin, and we came out strongly supporting this.
I have one other question here. You have a draft organizational chart. Is that action that would be taken by the city council too, is to approve the change in the organizational chart?
I would probably say yes.
Okay.
Where's that at? Yeah, yes, I would say yes. With the addition of a new truck company that's really specifically formed for hazmat response. You know, and our goal, and I don't know if Quentin's on, but our goal, council members, is that I would say in the first year, there's significant training that goes with this. It takes at least 120 hours of training before you become a technician. I think our goal is to, in the first year, try to get 5 firefighters certified, and then hopefully down the road, continue to transition more into that truck company, you know, that as our current CAT team members probably filter out. I don't know if our current CAT team members want to be firefighters, and we've kind of made that an option. If they want to, we'll put them through the training. If not, they'll continue at their current pay, and when they transition out, we'll just move on.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Any other input from the council or personnel committee?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept both of the items presented for this for approval.
I'll second that.
Motion by Craig, seconded by John. Discussion on the motion.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Meister, also a member of the Personnel Committee. We did discuss this at length and had a great discussion. And Councilmember Schaefer stated this eloquently. He said that this is one of those roles where it is, how did you say it, Craig? High consequence, low utilization. So
yeah, it's low frequency, high consequence.
Right. So there's a lot of consequences if we don't do this right. And yet we have to train. It's, you know, in the hospital, we hope that we never see an emergency. But we train for it. We train for the active shooters and things like that. And we hope and pray that we never see it. And yet, as we've seen across this country, these things happen. And the places that are more adequately trained, more adequately prepared are do better with it. So, Quentin, if you want to elucidate any, I would appreciate that to give everybody the 10,000 foot view of the importance of this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Excuse me. We haven't utilized the chemical assessment team much since they've been incepted, but when they are here, in jurisdiction calls are absolutely necessary, because if not, we're going to be calling on a CAT team most likely from Mankato, St. Cloud, or Moorhead, and so it's very vital, obviously, that we stay here. There is a lot of training, like we talked about. There's 40 hours of. Let me back up a little bit. We do some NFPA 1001 training initially, and so we're trained to a hazmat operations level, but only from NFPA 1001. And so the proposal would be to, like Chief Marshall said, would be to create this added truck company. And, you know, hopefully the goal would be 5, hopefully 8 or even 10 firefighters to take advantage of this thing to really get trained up, because like you said, it takes an incredible amount of time. Just to become NFPA 472 operations level certified, it's an additional 40 hours. And then from there, just to get to a technician level, it's an additional 40 hours on top of that. we're not even at the point where the State Fire Marshal Division even will give us their blessing to operate as a CAT team until after that technician level training. We do some hands-on training as a team that even the current technicians that we have also said that they'd be very interested in taking as well. All these things are funded through HMEP grants and through this additional, or not additional, excuse me, this funding that we already received through the state. So it wouldn't be a zero, it'd be a zero impact financial impact to the city for that. So a lot of things that to take on, and we're ready for the challenge. I think this is only going to make us stronger. We've kind of always had this gap between the CAT team and the fire department and who does what, and this really is going to close that gap and make it more functional.
Thank you, Quentin.
Little surprised at all you guys' discussion that one thing didn't come out that was used, or expression used quite a bit at the personnel meeting. And that's this puts science officers on the firefighter force. So I think that's, the part that I got the most out of in here is, and I think Quentin, you're probably the one that may have made it, or Craig, I don't remember, but this brings the science and chemical aspect to a fire that your fireman may not totally be ready for, and puts an expert in the team. So.
Yes, Councilman, you're 100% right. And that's one thing that I always had a question on, even in my junior ranks of being on the fire department, is what did the CAT team even do? We didn't know. The CAT team didn't know what the fire department did. So really bringing it in all together kind of makes it well-rounded. And I remember one training we held one time, and this came up in the personnel committee meeting, is I remember asking the question, what do you people even do when we were at a training? And one of the members actually stood up and made it very clear, we're the Google for chemicals for you. Well, that kind of answered a lot of questions for me. So by having the Google respond to these chemical calls that we do respond to, having that asset right in-house even makes the response faster, makes the incident go away faster, which in turn makes the city safer. So it really is a win-win for all of us.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this motion? If not, we'll move. Go ahead.
So if the motion is approved, then we do approve the new organizational chart then too with it? Is that part of the motion?
That would be correct. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Kyle?
Mayor Burns,
Yes.
Craig Schaefer,
Yes.
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
Yes.
Kim Lozinski.
Yes.
The motion passes. Agenda item number 13 is scheduling of a public hearing on a tax abatement. Again, the action item here is to schedule the public hearing. Sharon, do you want to provide any other detail?
The memo states the public hearing for Tuesday, December 10th. The actual notice says December 8th. It would be December 8th. And this is a request from Border States Electric. Currently, they are leasing a property within the community of Marshall. Conversations started late in 2019 for them to secure a more permanent location. They have explored options in and outside of the city of Marshall, and the proposed abatement really truly is an incentive for Border States. I think for them that they have to present to their corporate board and go back and forth here a little bit, but it's an incentive for them to make a long-term commitment to the city of Marshall. What we would gain from this, of course, is increased tax capacity. What you had in the packet was building value only. The current location or proposed location of this is currently leased out as farmland. This would then in turn turn this into commercial property, not only just for the building, but a 20,000 square foot yard as well. That's not computed into the tax capacity increase. So tonight is just the request to schedule the public hearing. December 8th, we would have Border State Electric representatives here to explain a little bit about the project and the benefits of this particular tax abatement. I didn't put this on consent because I thought if there was some early questions that someone may have, I can certainly answer them, but they can also be answered at the public hearing.
Thank you, Sharon. Any questions at this point? Now, is there a motion to schedule this public hearing for the tax abatement?
So move.
Motion by John, seconded by, help me, remotely.
Craig.
Seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Kyle?
Mayor Burns,
Yes?
Craig Schaefer,
Yes.
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler. Glenn,
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
Yes.
Jim Lozinski.
Yes.
And a motion passes. Agenda item number 14, the CARES Act funding summary report. Is Lauren on the?
We do have Carla and Lauren on the line as well. And what I plan to do is just give just a brief overview. Carla Drown provided all the specifics that you saw in your packet. This is an information only item. There's not a request to take action. And then Lauren can just give some comments on the business side. But just to recap, in early July, we did receive $1,038,415. Early on, the council was very supportive of ensuring that our business community was going to be supported with some assistance. And the council came through and continued on that commitment by early on dedicating half of the amount of the allocated dollars to business assistance grant. Since that time, as most of you are aware, the EDA came back and requested a little bit more. The other remaining amount really was used for a variety of purposes. But again, you've got the detailed expenditures, but it was related to COVID expenses and personnel. So we've had several different Treasury guidance amendments and revisions. And towards the end, I think it was in mid-September, it did allow us to use a major portion of personnel cost towards public safety, which they have done quite a bit in the area of COVID response. So it seems appropriate. And we were able to encumber all of the funds. If we weren't, we would have had to have returned them to the county by November 15th. Both Carla and more so Carla, because this happened in the last several months here, was relying on our auditors who provided oversight, as this will mean a federal audit requirement. And we did ensure that we were meeting their guidance as well. I want to comment here on, we did make some, in addition to EDA, we also did provide some funding to the Convention Visitors Bureau, Marshall Municipal Utilities, UCAP, which is their United Community Action Partnership. They did some building changes there. And then also our library. For MMU, UCAP, and the library, which we do, more so UCAP and library rather, we do have some county participation. One of the things that we stated for them is we do kind of want to make sure that that's noted in their fund balance. So if there's future capital expenses that we so in effect get credit for that. I'm not sure what the county contributed to the library, the UCAP. And I should have asked prior, I'm not sure if the county spent all 3 million of their funds either, but I think they have a few. Well, they did. They encumbered it for public safety. That's right. And human services and public health. So Carla provided a good breakout percentage-wise. 60% of the funds benefited the community of Marshall, 51% for EDA small business grants and then some other community donations. So I'm going to pause here for a little bit and see if Lauren Deitz would like to comment a little bit on the business assistance grant that the EDA board and the EDA committee provided oversight on.
Absolutely. I will just give some number updates. So we had 84 applications overall, and of the 84, we were able to distribute 78 grants. So it totaled 529,000. You can see that in your information already. A little farther breakdown there. We gave 59 grants for 7,500. We had 12 grants in the 5,000 to 74.99 range, and then 7 grants from 2,000 to 499 or $999. When we look at who received the grants, a majority were hospitality, health and beauty, salons, things of that nature. We also had a pretty high percentage in our retail, 16% of those going to downtown businesses. So we were very happy with who we were able to impact with these grants. And we've heard a lot of feedback from different types of businesses. I've had certain retailers reach out and say they don't know that they could have kept their doors open had they not received this money between ours and the county. So it was very beneficial that they were able to get funds from both programs. I think that was able to keep some people afloat during these difficult times, especially now with restaurants being impacted again. So program overall we felt was very successful, and although we didn't use the full 550 we requested, we were able to get a majority of those funds out.
Thank you, Lauren. I thank you for the report. To me, what this shows is, first off, the community and staff really worked quickly. You didn't have a lot of time to set this up, but it was acted on quickly, and so that the funds were able to be allocated out to those entities that needed them as soon as possible. And I think the other thing the report shows is that it's well documented, that and credit to our finance department, that as we go through how these funds were utilized, that it will meet all the audit requirements, that it was all utilized appropriately. So I think that's important. And I think the other thing is that, these funds were made available for a purpose, and we utilized them locally for that purpose. So thank you to everyone who has been involved in that. Other input from the council or questions?
I have a question about the nonprofits. Did we notify all the nonprofits and like churches in town that they could qualify for the money?
Yes, we actually reached out to churches individually. Many of them just didn't have the negative impact at that time. They weren't able to show the documentation that they needed the funds according to our guidelines. But yes, we reached out to all of our nonprofits.
Okay. It has payroll of $390,000 here. Could somebody explain me the payroll amount there?
The payroll amount would be various employees that coded their time to COVID, or generally were accepted through the U.S. Treasury as a acceptable encumbrance. So I stated earlier that public safety wasn't allowed expenditure through this program, and I'd have to look at the exact breakdown. I mean, early on, personnel, HR, admin, city clerk, on down the line, put a lot of time in, but towards the end, when there were additional funds, we did encumber them to public safety.
The 390,000, that wasn't extra additional payroll that we had because of the virus. It's just allocating part of what we already normally have.
That's correct.
And I noticed that we paid rent to the Merit Center.
Yep.
What I'm wondering is when we allocate a certain amount of those already existing city expenses to this money, wouldn't it be better if the city took less of the money and more of it went to the businesses that really need the money? And not that the city doesn't need it, but the businesses that are hurting, the more the city takes, the less that was available for the businesses. And I'm just wondering if that was a consideration.
So when we first set up the grant program, we didn't know the amount of interest. So the level of support given to businesses in terms of the amount of the grant, we really had to be kind of cautious a little bit on, where we're going to have enough money to give to everybody and hit the most need. The other aspect of the grant program, at least for the city, was we were a little more particular on what the grant could be used for. We were nervous early on with some of the Treasury guidance on what would be allowed in terms of paying out in terms of the grant. It had to have a COVID-related tie-in. The county was less stringent. They've gotten advice from their auditors and their review, and in effect, actually, the county had maybe even a little bit better program than we did, but that's how we went about it. So hindsight, we could have, but we also have to keep in mind the City CARES Act fund that we've encumbered. It will be sitting in our fund balance going into 2021. And as you noticed in our packet, there's a discussion about maybe transferring more funds to the EDA. That is something that the council could consider going forward. And not only just the immediate need of restaurants and bars in the next 4 weeks, another consideration is going to be how do we help our establishments pivot? How do we help our establishments reemerge after we get out of this pandemic? That the need there might also be great, not just right now. So, but there is an opportunity to provide additional funds. We just had to get the funds encumbered by November 15th. And, each step of the way we kind of learned as we went along, and we had a short time frame, as the mayor mentioned.
Other questions, other input?
The way this was set up, is this similar to what other cities are doing? We're pretty much giving standardized amounts to different businesses and nonprofits. It's not necessarily based on need, where those that need it the most get the most money. Is that somewhat similar to what other cities are doing, just a standardized amount?
I would say that we can validate the amount that each establishment got, and it looks like we just threw out the same amount, but they were all validated. And I would say that the amounts that they were given, it was because they met those amounts. But there's some 5,000, there's some 7,500, and there's some odd numbers in there too. So I don't know if that answers your question, but they're validated COVID-related expenses.
There were communities that allocated out a flat amount of funds without a lot of documentation. I think, Lauren, in your review, your discussion with other EDA directors around the state, that probably is the case, and we probably required a bit more documentation of actual impact directly related to COVID than perhaps some other communities.
Yeah, it kind of went one of two ways. You either saw a flat rate, especially for communities our size. And the reason we requested more documentation from the beginning is because our goal was to never have to force a business to pay back their grant. And that is the fear for some of these communities that aren't being as strict with their guidelines, is that when they are audited, they may need to pay back a portion of that, and that would technically fall back to the business. So we wanted to make sure that they got their money free and clear. Other communities did up to certain amounts. I think the most I saw outside of the metro was 10,000. So we weren't out of the ballpark for what we gave out to our businesses.
And any other input?
I agree with the documentation and requiring that sort of thing. And I am sure all these expenses were legitimate. I guess my concern was some of these companies are more needy than others, just like in our society. And we usually give assistance to those that need it the most. And here it looks like the standardized amount for a business was $7,500, even though some may have needed a lot more than $7,500 and some could have gotten by with less than $7,500. And so, in my philosophy of the government is that you should help those that need it and need it the most. If you have a limited amount of dollars, give it to those that need it the most. I mean, certainly all of them have needs, but which ones need it the most? But I realize that takes a lot more bookkeeping and work is involved in figuring out who needs it the most. But that would be my concern, is that those businesses and organizations that need it the most should get more money, and those that don't have quite the needs should get by with less money. Thank you.
Any other input or questions from the council?
I just have some input here, Lauren and Sharon. I just want to say, as a business owner, doing the extra documentation ahead of time, I want to thank you for that. Because to go back to a business owner maybe in February saying you got to pay this grant back could be very hard on them. More than likely, they may not have the money. So I just want to give credit to the staff for going through and doing that. As somebody who's applied for various things through SBA and PPP, I've been on the other end doing this, and there's that fear at the end that some of this may have to go back as a business owner of several businesses. So I appreciate the fact you guys did that extra step, and that should give comfort to our business owners that their grant is their grant, and that's good for them to know going forward.
Thank you, Jim. Any other input from the council? If not, thank you again, Sharon, Lauren, Carla, Annette, for all of your work on this, as well as the members of the EDA board who had special meetings, put a lot of extra time in through the summer and fall for this purpose. So thank you. With that, if it meets the approval of the council, I'll move us to agenda item number 15. And this is the item that's been referred to numerous times this evening. Consider the transfer of funds to establish the EDA response funds for the impacted establishments that are impacted directly by the latest executive order shutdown of closure for 4 weeks of bars and restaurants. Sharon?
So early on, of course, with the latest news of the executive order of shutting down establishments until December 18th, and early on there was no discussion about small business assistance, maybe a little bit through the federal government, but not a lot of traction there. The thought process was the city's ability to divert some existing funds, again, through our fund balance. We look like at 2020, it's going to be an okay year. And previously mentioned, we have some CARES Act funds that will be set aside in the fund balance, designated somehow, some way down the road as well. So we have the capacity to, I think, divert some additional funds to the EDA. And this is really just to kind of throw it out there to the council, get some feedback. As most of you mentioned, it does now appear that maybe the Minnesota legislature may come up with some incentives. The governor Democratic proposal is not as lucrative as the state GOP Republican side, but I assume they'll meet somewhere in the middle, and maybe that's what they threw out. So one of the thought processes is just kind of getting some feedback from you. Because of the latest, maybe the legislature might take something up. Do we want to wait and see what comes out of that before proceeding with this? But again, just a thought to throw out there. We could divert some more funds to businesses in need, implement some kind of grant program that would help those businesses impacted by the latest executive order. And I know Lauren has started to do a grant parameter program, again, we've got to look at need and amount of funds. The last time the EDA set up a committee, and the EDA committee, which I didn't mention for CARES Act, we actually had a committee that reviewed all the grant disbursements. And I think the EDA board would probably do that again. So there's some really good oversight. So I'll just kind of end my discussion and see what kind of feedback the council wants to give for this item.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Feedback from the council.
Sharon, or council members, if we start putting it together now, it takes a couple weeks. You say, wait, we don't meet for another 2 weeks. So by that point, you're into end of December, first part of January, before we can even implement it. But if we start the process now and the legislator comes through before our next meeting, I know it's extra work that we maybe won't use, but we could stop the program at that time. I think waiting is not necessarily something these businesses need now. They're closed now. They need money now, or help now. I don't know, so I think waiting is not a good idea.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm in favor of moving forward to at least get the process put together and be ready to go.
Any other input? So the recommendation is for the establishment of the EDA response funds. That would be the first step in getting this set up.
And I would make that motion.
I'll second it.
Second.
Motion by Jim, seconded by Craig. Discussion?
So the motion is to transfer the $100,000?
The motion would, go ahead, Sharon.
The motion either could be to transfer the $100,000 to establish the grant program, or to direct the EDA to establish grant program and come back on December 8th for the formal approval of the transfer. So it's however the council wants to do it.
I would make the motion that they get the program ready and come forward on the 8th for formal approval of the council.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I'd second that.
Okay, everybody understands the motion now? Any other discussion?
So the motion is not to transfer the 100,000 right now.
Correct.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, Kyle, we'll move to a vote.
Mayor Burns,
Yes.
Craig Schaefer,
Yes.
Steve Meister,
Yes.
Glenn Bearcooler,
Yes.
John DeCramer,
Yes.
Russ Labatt,
Yes.
Jim Lozinski.
Yes.
And the motion does pass. We'll move then to agenda item number 16, Commission Board Liaison Reports. From mine, I will, in light of the length of this meeting, I'll keep it brief, but the Southwest Regional Development Commission did meet since we last met. Much of my involvement in that has been with the COVID RLF response fund, and there's approximately $500,000 that is still available for lending, and under very favorable rates, 0% for the first several months, and then very low interest for the remaining term of the loan. And the goal is that would be fully utilized by May 6th, which was the CARES EDA deadline. With that, I'll move Craig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief also. The only one of mine that met was the Southwest Emergency Communications Board. And the only thing I want to say about that is there's a lot of things going on there, pretty high level, pretty high tech, but it keeps all of our armor system and our other emergency communications things up to date and moving smoothly. And the only thing I really want to say additional about that is that Alex sits in on that, and he is deeply involved, deeply engaged, and heavily contributing, and is a real asset to the group, which then is a real asset to the community. So I just want to give kudos to him and to Jim Marshall for supporting his involvement also in that. Thank you.
Okay, Steve.
So Cable Commission did not meet, Community Services did not meet, and I will defer EDA to Councilmember DeCramer.
Okay, Glenn.
My commissions have not met.
John.
First off, on the EDA, I think we've took most of the action on what we've covered tonight, so not too much more on that. But MMU, although we did approve the agreement, I've got a few more bits of news, all of it good. MMU was notified by Missouri River Energy Services that they're going to receive a refund check in December to the tune of just a little over $2.1 million in refund back from our power supplier. Basically, with all the changes, partly related to COVID, a few things, they've had less expenses because some of the power requirements through the summer were not as great as anticipated. So MMU will be receiving that money and will be dispersing that money back to the customers. And they will do that. There's a lot of discussion how to do that in the most fair process. And what they've concluded is they will do it as part of the power cost adjustment. So it'll be a little bit for 12 months, going on out to all the customers. And it'll depend on, their power usage and the usage for that month. So that is going back to the customers. It works out pretty well. It's going to start on seeing it on the February billing, because it's going to take place in January, and then it'll show up on your February bill, which would be the January usage. Really, with what normally would kick in January was like for the residential user, there would be a water rate increase in January already scheduled. It's probably going to offset that for pretty much through the whole year. So give kind of an idea on what the dollar amount is. But obviously with businesses that use more power, they would get a larger share of that. The other thing on MMU goes back a little bit in history. At one time, ADM was planning on putting a gas-fired power plant for cogeneration, both steam and electrical. And they were doing that really in partnership with Missouri River. And Missouri River actually towards the end was going to put it up, but then there's other issues came up that made that not feasible. Well, there's 80 acres of land out there that was going to be reserved for that use for that power plant. And Missouri River this last month has decided to proceed with the purchase of that 80 acres. And they will be putting in a 10 to 12 megawatt solar farm on that site. So that'll be in Marshall, and I believe there's going to be discussions heading up now while getting that land assist.
Annexed.
Annexed, get the right word, yes. Get annexed into the city. So those are two very good things that are going on with the MMU for the city. So
thank you, John. Anything else?
No.
Russ?
Mine have not met, Mr. Mayor.
And Jim?
Mine have not met, but I'll give a little update on City Hall because that meets probably twice a week now with the committee members, and I appreciate all their hard work. As you can tell, City Hall is fully enclosed now. I know a couple months ago we talked about a change order, or PR4 is what it's called, a change order due with the wall between the hotel and City Hall. That is coming forward. As my other committee members will tell you, we've been working on the price of that. I think the first price came in at about $570, and we've been pushing back on the contract, working back and forth. As of now, it's down to $460. We have another meeting with them on Monday to discuss stuff that's on that change order that we need to work out yet before it comes forward to council. So the three of us, along with the staff, and Ray, and I'll give Ray a lot of credit. We've been working hard to get this cost down. City Hall is still on the time frame to be finished on time, even with that change. I think they said their schedule's been pushed out just 10 days. As you can see, we're fully enclosed. It is heated inside now. There was a tour yesterday, and Russ was there in person. The rest of us zoomed in. So Russ will maybe help fill in some more on this, but I believe there's sheet rocking in the basement. So the wiring is mostly completed. So after the basement, they're moving to the first floor to sheet rock and then the second floor. So it is progressing along nicely. The mainstay wall problem, as we saw that sit for several months with supports on it, has been corrected. That wall is done. And if weather holds, that wall may even get completed yet this winter or fall. So that will be off to the side. We're finished with mainstay when that's done. So that's kind of the gist of where City Hall is going. I don't know if the other four of you have any questions on that. Feel free to ask. And hopefully next meeting, we have more information or a finalized price on what that wall costs from tearing down the hotel. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for your leadership there. We'll move then to council member individual items. Craig, let's start on your end.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the good of the whole, I have nothing. Thank you. Nothing that can't wait.
And Steve?
I just want to again reiterate the issues with COVID. If people who are listening and the people who are watching the broadcast, it is real. State of South Dakota is at 90% capacity in their ICUs. We are taking patients from all over the area. People are sick. The people who are coming in are much sicker. So listen to what the governor has said. And I know it's tough. I know people are sick and tired of COVID. They're really sick and tired. But I read about from a friend of mine at a different hospital. You know, they call us in the hospital frontline workers. We are not the frontline workers anymore. We are the last defense. The people who are frontline workers are everybody out there wearing the masks, washing their hands, social distancing. It's tough. We have in many places activated resource teams, which is not ever what we wanted to do, but we are practicing those even here in Marshall. So haven't had to use them yet, but we've thought about it. We've got some medicines that are coming. Give us grace, please. Testing is a big deal and everybody wants to get tested, but testing takes time and you've got to wait for it. And remember, testing, if you were exposed yesterday, please don't come in tomorrow or today to get tested. The test will not be accurate and the recommendation is 5 to 7 days from your exposure. So that's all I have unless anybody's got questions.
Thank you, Dr. Meister. Jim, let's move to you.
Well, thanks. That's kind of a way to jump around, Bob. But I just, I have a daughter who's a nurse, so I want to echo what Steve says. She does work in a hospital, and she just sent us a message today. She was called 4 times to come in for shifts on her day off, and she just said no because she's worked, I think it was 8 or 9 days straight. So I agree with you, Steve. We need to give our medical professionals a break. And, they're getting wore out. And I'm just coming from my daughter who texts us just exhausted from working. So other than that, the only other thing I'd like to comment on is we as a city council have it fairly easy in Minnesota because our governor does make these mandates, which makes our job easier. And I just want to give him credit for that. I look at the Sioux Falls City Council now, and they're getting hammered because they don't have the leadership of the state government. And I just want to give credit to where credit's due that we aren't put in the position to make those tough decisions on mandates or closing or anything. So it makes our job easier, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Jim. Glenn, my apologies. I didn't mean to jump over you. So let's step back to Glenn.
Okay. Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but I will now. One shoe doesn't fit all. And sometimes it's better to let states decide what's best for them. And sometimes it's better to let communities decide what's the best policy for them. And policy in Sioux Falls may not be a good policy in Marshall or Mitchell or Lakefield, Minnesota. So I like to see certain decisions made at the local level and lower levels, and oftentimes you end up with better decisions. So I think we have a disagreement as to what's the best way to handle it, and I respect your opinion. I hope you respect my opinion.
Okay, anything else, Glenn?
No, no, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, then we'll go back in order. Russ?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to compliment the two contractors on 4th Street and also First Street for getting the final lifts down. And I believe they sprayed the areas for grass or whatever in the last day or so. And also thank the residents that live on both of those streets in that area. They put up with a lot during this summer. So I appreciate their patience and their understanding. And thanks also to city staff. That's all I have.
Okay, and John?
Two things. One, we've talked tonight about getting some help for the bars and restaurants, and we've talked about getting some help for the businesses. Just wanted to fill you in on informational purposes that get down to the individual level. There is help going out for the individuals and for the families out there as well. We've got a local administrator that's originally received a $1.6 million grant to help in the COVID housing assistance program. That recently was doubled to 3.2 million. And they're working frantically in the region, which covers several counties, to get that money out to people that are in the 100, 200% AMI income levels. And so on the lower end of the income levels, and getting that assistance out to them. So there's really been a push, and there's a lot of work going on to cover not only the businesses and the restaurants, but get down to the family level as well. Last item is, last week we buried a member of the community that gave 31 years of service, Marv Bond, and the police force, and really it was great to see the honor that our police department gave Marv at the funeral, just being there, pallbearers for him, a great representation by the Law Enforcement Center. They put in a lot to the city, and a lot of people were there to show that respect. So just wanted to comment on that.
Okay, thank you, John. We'll move then to staff reports, Sharon.
I did include a handout on the 2021 levy. As you know, December 8th, we're going to do a presentation, a truth and taxation public meeting. And we will have a slide presentation, and the amount of the levy isn't contingent, or it isn't going to be that critical that I have that for December 8th. And we are still aiming to adopt the final levy towards the end of December. If the council gave some additional direction on final levy, we can then present that in the truth and taxation. Granted, we have not experienced high interest in truth and taxation. Maybe others tap into some of the information via the internet and look up the presentation. Or they ask the assessor's office on their actual truth and taxation statement. But just kind of asking for some feedback. I did put forward here, similar to what Annette presented earlier. As you recall, the preliminary levy is 3.5. If we put a little earmark in there for lost revenue of 50,000 with some additional cuts, it leaves us at about 3%. And I can look at it both ways. 50,000 here or there, maybe it isn't a lot, but it can add up and what happens to us in future years is it really helps us for future levies to have an amount in there. I'm still concerned about what's going to happen with revenue in 2021, probably more so local government aid. I'm not sure what's going to happen yet towards the end of this year. And then we still have the sales tax revenue, which may be some concern. I am going to talk out of both sides of my mouth here because we do have, it appears we're going to have a good 2020 year in terms of less expenditures. And we are able to keep in place some of those CARES Act funds on the city side. And again, we're going to have some less revenue. We know this for sales tax. We're going to utilize some of those CARES Act funds to kind of shift them over for some of those issues that we've had on the sales tax side. So again, I presented here a 3%. I've heard other figures. Our rate of growth is about 2%. And if you guys want to comment on direction, we can put the final piece in place for that last meeting in December. So that's why I put it on the agenda for tonight.
Okay. Thank you, Sharon.
Sharon, do you want comments tonight?
That would be great.
Since I've been talking a lot tonight, and you and I have chatted about this, that I've been pushing the 2% at the rate of growth, which gives us a net zero tax increase, just the 2% of growth. And I haven't been convinced otherwise to leave that 2%. I have an open mind always, but that's where I've been at, and I've been at that since we started this. So I just thought I'd share that with you.
Well, just for the sake of keeping it going, I understand and respect the 2% at rate of growth, but I think to make sure that we leave ourselves in a position to continue forward, and my big fear is that as the state gets caught up after COVID with what they've laid out and what they've come short and overspent, I see the potential that we could end up getting disappropriations in 23-24 on allocations, and I would support the 3%. That's a 1% hike in actual increase in taxes per the tax rate, with 1% plus the 2% growth for a 3% virtual, or actual. That would be my ceiling.
Any other input?
This is Dr. Meister. I think that I would agree with Councilmember Schaefer. I think that we've got to leave ourselves a contingency for future uncertainties, because there's going to be no question. None of us have planned this. None of us know what's going on. We don't need to go hog wild, nor should we ever go hog wild, but we've got to make sure that we're prepared for the lean years, because I think that they are probably coming.
Thank you, Steve. Other input? Planner Russ or John?
I would agree with Councilman Lozinski. I'd even go less than that if it possibly could. I think it's going to be a tough, like I've stated before, it's a tough financial year. It's a state of Minnesota is what, $3.1 billion in debt. I think it's going to be damn tough all the way through. So pardon my terminology, but I would encourage 2% or less. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I can't be the last one or the only one that didn't say anything on it, so I'll throw in my 2 cents. Money follows mission. I think we're doing the mission of the city and what we've got in the budget now. So I am okay with the 3% that we have it. So,
Glenn?
Okay, I guess I'm the last one.
Well, no, I'm.
Oh, you're there too, right?
I'll be the last.
Go first. You can go first if you want.
Go ahead.
I would go further up. To me, I would freeze the budget. I would, of all years, to freeze the budget, I think.
Okay. I think you might have went mute there, Glenn.
Oh, okay. Did you hear any of what I said?
Yeah. We wanted the freeze part.
Yeah, what a freeze. We're in tough economic times right now and a lot of uncertainty. And I think the cautious conservative thing to do would be to freeze spending.
And for my part, I think we have a well-prepared budget that looks at actual needs. There's been a number of many reductions that have been made over what perhaps could have been identified as a need. So we have a very lean budget, and I also agree with concern about probably the 2021 budget and beyond. So I am supportive of the 3%. Well, Sharon, I think you have maybe a sense of input from the council.
I do. Thank you.
Anything else, Sharon?
No.
Okay, Jason?
I'll take a pass tonight, Mayor, unless there are any questions.
And Dennis?
Let the mayor have the last word tonight. I don't have
Okay.
it.
The council has the remaining items, including the information items and the upcoming meetings. Is there anything further to come forward this evening?
Just
Happy
adjournment.
Thanksgiving.
That sounded like a motion to adjourn.
Oh, that'd be a motion to adjourn and a happy Thanksgiving.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by John, seconded by Jim. We're happy Thanksgiving and adjourning. All in favor, say aye by voice vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye and bye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.